a funny thing happened to me one day. I got this request on the site from a lady named Terran Smith, first asking me if she could be an announcer for a special I was working on. And after looking at her stuff, I then said, I could do you one better. Would you be interested in co-hosting the special?
And of course, I had to say yes. I watched some snippets of his show, and what I loved so much about him, besides his lovely singing voice, is his positive personality. And I thought that he and I would be a good mix to co-host a show together.
What I loved about her is her professionalism, her singing voice, and her positivity. The first time I met her through a Skype call, she and I clicked instantly.
It definitely was meant to be. Would you agree?
I agree.
He's Jacob.
She's Terran Ray.
And together, we're Jacob and Terran Ray.
And here he is, Jacob Pyle.
Thank you, Paul Poteet, very much. Paul Poteet filling in for Zach Brown this week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Jacob and Terran Ray for this Saturday night, Sunday morning, beginning of March the 1st of 2025. My name is Jacob Pyle, coming to you from my new home here in Kokomo, Indiana. Terran Smith has the day off this week. Tonight on our program, to commemorate the beginning of March and the beginning of spring in a few weeks, we're going to replay an interview I did from March of 24th of 2024. My guest for this week's episode is Christina Erne. She's a weather lady for the NBC affiliate WJAR TV in Providence, Rhode Island. I'll tell you how we were able to have her on the show. It happened this way. We were planning on doing our April Fool's show that year. And Christina was kind enough to reach out to me on Upwork to ask if she would be interested in conducting my interview for the April Fool's episode of the show, and I said yes. And in exchange, we would have her on as a guest on my show just so the viewers would get to know her, and it would also be a great opportunity to talk about severe weather with spring coming soon. So it all worked out well, I thought. So without further ado, here from March of 2024 is my interview with Christina Erne. Christina, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Jacob.
Yeah, no problem. One thing I should point out, you and I have a fact in common that we both work weird shifts. By that I mean...
Definitely.
You mostly do the weather for the morning newscast. People think, oh yeah, I get up every morning and the first thing I will watch when I wake up is your morning newscast. Tune in for a half hour, get informed, have me a bowl of cereal and head off to work. Or in my case... come home, turn on the news, have a bowl of cereal, and head off to bed. But for you guys, your day starts pretty early. In fact, so early that it's long before everybody else is awake. How do you do it?
It is definitely something that you have to train your body for, and it takes years. I've been doing it for almost 5 years, the early morning shift. So it's something that takes a lot of patience on the part of your family, getting used to, your scheduling changes. But I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning because our programming starts at 4:30 in the morning. Our station is WJAR in Providence, Rhode Island. So 4:30 in the morning is when we go on air. So before that, not only do I have to put together my forecasts, but I also have to do my hair and makeup. I have to do mic checks. I have to do a couple recordings for later in the day. So my day starts long before that 4:30 a.m. time frame. So I have to give myself plenty of time beforehand, and that kind of leads me into going to bed obviously early, like you're familiar with, but I'm able to spend time with some of my family and still kind of communicate with my friends. I end up taking a big nap in the middle of the day, so between about 1 and 4 o'clock I am completely asleep in the afternoon.
Okay, cool. I will say this because how do you, I do have to ask you this one question though, and I get asked this all the time as a night shift worker. How do you, you said you go to bed in the afternoon, how do you manage your social life and when you're working these weird shifts?
Well, it's really tough. I mean, I have to say I'm not very fun on the weekends, that's for sure, because I really go to sleep, or at least get very tired after 7 or 8 o'clock maximum in the evening. So I typically opt to do more daytime activities with friends. And I think the one good thing about it is that I am an early riser. So when most of my friends, by the time they get up, they have a message or a text message waiting from me. So I'm kind of their early morning friend, and especially with a couple of my friends who have just had children, and they're up at all hours of the night. I'm there. I'm awake at 3 o'clock if they're nursing, or 4:30 in the morning when they're nursing. So
Yeah,
I'm definitely something's always around.
Yeah, I was gonna get ready to ask you because I know like the 5 a.m. Well, obviously the 6 a.m. and the 7 a.m. Well, of course, a lot of people are getting up and going to work. But I was gonna say, what kind of viewers do you normally get at 4:30 or 5 a.m. normally?
We have a surprising a lot of viewers at that time. It's usually a lot of older people who like to get up very early, or people who do have to go into work by 7 o'clock. If a business opens at 7, or if a coffee shop opens at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, they're getting up at that time frame. We do have overnight people who are going to sleep at that time. But if you think about diners and cafes that are open at 6 or 7, there's all employees there, doctors who might start at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's our clientele. And you'd be surprised, I think, how many people in recent years have opted for an earlier morning lifestyle because since COVID, oh, there's my cat. Since COVID and after COVID, I think a lot of people have decided to go to the gym earlier in the morning and maybe work out before work or before school. So that's the kind of clientele we have.
All right, so going back to the topic of weather, what made you interested in getting into the wonderful world of weather?
Well, one of the things that I really liked about weather to begin with is that I've just always loved science in general. My father was in the Coast Guard, and he would go out on ships for 6 weeks at a time when I was very young. And so I was always very interested in the ocean, climate science around the coastlines. And I live in Rhode Island, so we're surrounded by water everywhere you turn. And so I've always had that passion. When I went to Boston University for college, I knew I wanted to get into communication. So initially I went to be a reporter, but when I was interning at a local TV station in Boston, I was speaking to a meteorologist who urged me to get into meteorology. He said, if you love science as much as you do, we need more women in science. And he said, you would be welcomed with open arms if you became a meteorologist because, they are just really searching for more women. So I was actually a reporter up in Bangor, Maine, very, very far north, for a couple years while I was also getting my meteorology degree at the same time. And it kind of took off from there.
Cool. Now, the majority of our time together tonight is going to be learning about weather, myths and facts about stuff like tornadoes and severe weather. We might even, if we have time, delve into severe weather related stories that I have heard of and maybe get your thoughts on. So, I think the question here says, so first off, tell us about what it's like to be a meteorologist. You already told us about that. So, I know the answer to this, but just to kind of educate the viewers a little bit here, what is the difference between a watch and a warning?
That's a fantastic question. Some people actually have really good descriptions of it on like TikTok and stuff too. A lot of videos are kind of taking off about it. A watch basically urges you to understand that the pieces are in place for the potential for severe weather. So the storm has not come together yet, but there are certain pieces of the storm that are readily available in the atmosphere. So a watch is basically saying this could happen because we've got these few things in place. For instance, for a tornado, a watch would say, okay, well, we're seeing instability in the atmosphere. We're seeing our winds pick up. All we're waiting for is that rotation, and then we would issue a warning. So a watch is such that the pieces exist, and then a warning is that these pieces that exist together right now, so you need to take shelter. So even in the case of not even necessarily just a tornado, we have winter storm watches and warnings. We get the watch when we know that there's a lot of cold air. We know that there's the potential for snowfall. We might just not know how much snowfall. And so that warning is then issued when we're closer to the event and we know exactly what those final pieces might be. And I mentioned TikTok because there are a lot of people taking to social media to kind of explain this to viewers. And one way is by donuts, believe it or not. When you see like a blank donut, I don't even know what you would call like just a normal plain donut.
Just a glazed donut, original donut, something like that?
Yeah, like without any toppings, even without the glaze. You've got the donut, you've got a pile of sprinkles, you have a pile of icing. That's what a watch would be. But when you have the actual donut with the whole glaze situation and the whole sprinkle situation all together, that's the warning.
Talking about that makes me hungry. Anyway, we have to take this first break. When we come back, more with Christina Erne. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Tonight on Jacob and Terran Ray, we are replaying an episode I did featuring Christina Erne. Christina Erne is a weather girl for the NBC affiliate WJAR-TV in Providence, Rhode Island, and she is here to talk about severe weather. So, from March of 2024, here's part 2 of my interview with Christina Erne. We were talking before the break about watches and warnings. Now, let's talk. I want to talk about. There's a video. I wanted to get your thought on it. This is a perfect example of take the warning seriously when you hear a tornado warning.
Okay.
You know, when there was a video. It was an ABC affiliate in Ohio, and this destructive tornado, there was this big, dangerous, destructive tornado that touched ground, and it was in the middle of, and they were showing the Bachelor. You watch The Bachelorette, don't you?
Yeah, I actually do, yeah.
Yeah, they were showing The Bachelorette, and then all of a sudden, and I'm going to do my best radio announcer's voice here. They come on in the middle of The Bachelorette and they say, "We interrupt this regularly scheduled program to present this weather bulletin." And this guy comes out and says, "Okay, everybody take shelter now. This isn't." And yet all the people on social media were commenting, "Put the Bachelorette back on. Put the Bachelorette back on." And the weather guy literally snapped. And he was like, "No, we're not going back to your program. This is serious business we're talking about here." Have you seen that video?
I've seen it, yeah, and I've seen a lot of things like it. There's been a couple times during big sporting events that has also happened, and yeah.
Yeah, I kind of understand the feeling. You know, when I was a kid, and I'm sure you were the same way, when you were home from school or something, you would turn on The Price is Right or something like that. And then they would always interrupt, like if the president's got something to say or whatever, they will always break away during The Price is Right, and I was like, yeah, I mean, so I kind of get the feeling, but again, take the warning seriously. I mean,
Absolutely, I think it makes sense to a lot of people, you know, to heed the warnings, but some people just simply don't get it. Some people are even kind of selfish. I mean, look, when there's a tornado warning in place, for instance, that is such a small part of a community that's typically under a tornado warning. I mean, those areas that are under tornado warnings were only a few miles wide and a few miles in length. So if you're talking about, you know, a big county in Ohio, or like if you're in Texas and there's a very, very big county or multiple counties, and there's this little warning box, it's absolutely going to feel very inconvenient to people who are outside of that box, because they're going to say, well, this doesn't apply to me, so why is my programming being stopped? We live in such a fast-paced world nowadays that we want everything that we want in this specific moment. But the reality is that broadcast TV goes to everybody in that community. So it doesn't matter where you live, you're going to get those tornado warnings. And I think the thing that a lot of people do have to put aside, yes, it's awful for that moment if you miss a kick in the football game or if you miss part of The Bachelorette, but it is actually critical to saving people's lives. And as a meteorologist, it's actually our jobs to be a public servant. That's why during COVID, we still had to go into work. We were not able to stay home or anything like that. We do a job for a public service and a public safety standpoint. So I know it can be super inconvenient, but there's a good reason for it.
Right. All right. I want to talk about I want to talk about obviously severe thunderstorms. I mean, you should be aware of severe thunderstorms too, but I especially want to hit tornadoes. So let me explain to you my little, and what to do. What to do if a tornado warning is issued for your area. Okay. First of all, let me explain to you my situation. Maybe you can kind of help me out. So I live upstairs in this 2-story duplex in Noblesville.
Okay.
So I don't really have a place to go shelter, like nearby or whatever. What would you do if you were in my situation?
So the first thing that I would recommend is go into the most innermost part of whatever floor you're on. So if you're not able to get into a basement space, if you're not able to get to the first floor, then whatever the central most room is in your space, get there, away from any windows and doors, because we know that tornadoes or high winds or flying debris can break windows. So you want to get away from any kind of windows and doors and get to the most innermost part of your house. You can also go in the bathtub. Sounds kind of silly, but you're surrounded typically by ceramic or very sturdy material compared to maybe bureaus that could fall over or picture frames that could come off the wall. So interior most part of your house, no windows, no doors, bathroom, no water running.
All right, cool. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring up this whole earlier when I said this whole we interrupt this program, all that. I was I don't share anything private outside of here, but I wanted to say that I appreciate, like I told you this before we taped, I appreciate what you guys do every day as weather people. And when we were originally going to do our little meeting earlier, but we had to postpone which I understood completely, because there was a snowstorm that was hitting the Rhode Island area. Tell us about the snowstorm first and foremost.
So this was a good one. It was back in late February, and as kind of a refresher for those who might not know about the Northeast, typically we get some pretty good nor'easters. We get a lot of snow. Typically we see anywhere between like 20 and 35 inches of snow a season. So that's the 3 months of December, January, and February. But last winter, 2022 to 2023, we got 10 inches of snow total for the whole season. It was an incredibly dry season. So this year, any little bit of snow, people have been getting very excited about. So back in February, we did get a pretty good snowstorm. And it was right before Valentine's Day. It was the day before Valentine's Day. And we got anywhere from low end 3 inches to 9 or 10 inches in some spots. And it was what we call a classic nor'easter. A nor'easter is northeasterly winds. So it's typically a coastal low pressure system that grazes our south coastline, and then it continues up towards the Gulf of Maine. And those northeasterly winds wrap back into Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island and even parts of New Hampshire, brings additional snowfall and really high winds. So that's pretty much what we saw. It was a one-day hard hitter. The only issue with this snowstorm was the track changed kind of last minute. This doesn't happen very often, but in this case, it did. Meteorology is an imperfect science. We've learned so much in the past 30 to 50 years, but it's still not perfect. So the track changed last minute, and a lot of people in Boston were very disappointed because they were forecast to get a lot more snow than what they actually got. But Rhode Island got crushed.
How much snow did you guys end up getting? You remember?
We got this. the city of Providence got between 6 and 7 inches, so half a foot. And remember, I mean, we were coming off of a season where we didn't get any snow, so anything sounds big to us. And we were looking forward to it too. So yeah, it wasn't like a foot or two, but everyone was pretty psyched about it. Some communities, though, did get closer to about 12 inches. I think the maximum was around 10.5. So it's pretty good across Rhode Island. Massachusetts ended up only getting a trace to a couple inches.
Well, that's good. So we still got about 45 seconds left before we have to take this first break. Just real briefly off the top of your head, what was your favorite weather story that you've covered?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I was working in Albany, New York for a while in a mobile storm tracker van at one TV station. And there was a time we were covering a severe summer storm. So there were a couple tornadoes, some high wind, and I was in the mobile storm tracker when we were trying to chase down a tornado. And there was golf ball sized hail that was hitting this vehicle, and it was pretty terrifying. I was on air at the time that we were driving, and it was pelting the van, and you couldn't even really hear my voice over the roar of the hail. It was cool.
When we come back, I will have the conclusion to the interview. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you'd like to be a guest on this show, here's Paul Poteet to tell us how. Paul?
If you'd like to be a guest, or if you are ordering a DVD copy of tonight's program, send Jacob an email. His email address is jtpile1@aol.com. Please include the air date seen on your screen when ordering.
Thank you, Paul. Tonight on Jacob and Terran Ray, we are replaying an episode I did featuring Christina Erne. Christina Erne is a weather girl for the NBC affiliate WJAR-TV in Providence, Rhode Island. And she is here to talk about severe weather. So from March of 2024, here's the conclusion to my interview with Christina Erne. Now, we were going to talk about some of the we've talked about a few weather stories that we came across. So I happen to have. Let me see if we can. I'm gonna try to get this. We're gonna play. I want to play a little game with you, if you don't mind. We have. Okay. I have in front of me a list of myths for tornadoes, okay. And I am going to read. I'm going to read a statement, and you tell me whether it's true or false.
Okay.
Ready? A green sky means a tornado is coming.
I don't know. False.
You're right, it is false. It's not that simple. While skies do often turn green during a tornado, and by the way, I'm getting all this from a website, there's no real correlation between the tornado and the green sky. Should you be weather aware about it? I would say yes. Should you play it on the safe side just in case? But yes, but just because the sky is green does not mean that a tornado is certain. Okay. Cool. I think I know the answer to this one, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm going to get your thoughts for it first. Tornadoes never come into cities.
Oh, false.
False. Yes, you're right. It has happened before. Again, not very likely, but it can happen. I have a friend of mine who lives in Oklahoma, and they once had a deadly tornado rip through there. Matter of fact, I used to live in Kokomo before I moved to Noblesville. I used to live in Kokomo, Indiana. One time, 2016 to be exact, there was this big tornado that ripped through Kokomo, Indiana, a big town, and took down a Starbucks, took down a bunch of other things. I think you probably heard the story. Yeah. I mean, there was a guy, the manager of Starbucks was smart. He knew to get everybody into shelter before the building was totally destroyed, because it was smashed. He brought everybody over to the restrooms, and everybody was safe, but not the building, luckily.
Oh,
so
yeah. Wow.
All right, here's the next one. Overpasses are good tornado shelters for motorists.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Actually, it says here false, and I'll explain why. This happened in Kansas, of all places. April 26th, 1991,
A group of motorists huddled under an overpass on the Kansas Turnpike during a tornado and shot video of their ordeal. Luckily, it didn't kill them. I don't know what it is. The fact that they're outside, or I don't know, but yeah, I'm just going by what this says.
Yeah, I guess because they're technically still outside. I think what you're supposed to do, I'm not 100% clear on all of my tornado science since we don't see them too often around here, but I'm pretty sure if you're in a vehicle, you're supposed to pull over, get out of your vehicle, and actually lay down in a ditch in the road. But I'm pretty sure that's like the official protocol, but obviously if you can get into like a basement of a building, that's what you'd be better off doing.
Okay. Here's a good one. Unless you are, like you just mentioned, unless you are a trained weather spotter, you should never try to outrun a tornado.
True, very true.
That is true. Actually, it says I'll give you that one, but it says here false. According to the article, it may be possible to try to outrun a tornado, but you have to know what the tornado is doing and what direction the tornado is in. If it were up to me, though, I would not attempt it.
Yeah, you should go if it's like what you're technically supposed to do is instead of outrunning it, you're supposed to take a sharp right or a sharp left-hand turn to get like as far away of it as possible. But yeah, never outrun it.
Yeah, I will. There was a thought I was going to tell you, and I completely forgot it. It'll come to me. Don't worry. All right. We're going to do one more. Open your house's windows to equalize air pressure during a tornado.
Huh. I mean, I want to say that's false, but I actually don't know.
That is correct. You're right. It's false.
I figured.
If your windows are open and a tornado comes to your house, it is almost certain that the wind and debris coming from the tornado could come into your house. Just, again, play it safe. As soon as you hear that tornado warning, just take shelter immediately. That's precious time you're wasting.
Right.
All right, we have about 1 minute 47 seconds left. What would be your advice to anybody that would be interested in being a meteorologist?
Great question. So first of all, being a meteorologist takes a lot of patience because obviously the science is constantly changing. So you have to be somebody who is willing to continue learning for pretty much the rest of your life. Even people like James Spann, meteorologists who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, they're constantly learning. Technology changes every year at minimum. We're constantly going to conferences and learning. So you have to be just open to new ideas, new technology, going with the flow and understanding that you're going to be wrong sometimes because that's just the nature of nature. But also it requires a lot of math and science. So if you love those two things, then you would do really well as a meteorologist. And also if you enjoy the science of meteorology, but you don't like the idea of being in front of a camera, there's a ton of jobs in meteorology behind the camera. There's people who build the computer graphics, who do kind of the behind the scenes number crunching, who does our social media, who does our blog writing. So if you're interested in it, pursue it. It doesn't mean that you have to be on TV, but if you like that, that's good too.
That's our show for tonight. Christina Erne can be found on Instagram under Christina Erne, all one word. Next week on our program, among other things, I'll have a more in-depth look at what it's like to live here in the city of Firsts, Kokomo, Indiana. That's next week. Until then, for Christina Erne, Terran Ray Smith, Paul Poteet, and all of us on Jacob and Terran Ray, I'm Jacob Pyle. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and good night, everybody.
This program has been pre-recorded. I'm Paul Poteet.